It happened last week, but it could have been any week. A room full of people, a classroom, a presentation, a dinner conversation. What watershed are we in now? Where does your drinking water come from? How many meals have you eaten that came out of Lake Ontario? How far are you from the nearest oil refinery, nuclear power plant, or proposed new oil pipeline running across your rivers? And even, where does the water in your bottled water come from? 20 years ago, I was in university for environment and resource studies. We looked at many issues, including the health of the Great Lakes. Things weren't good back then, but there was a growing coordination between the two countries and the various states and provinces. Ontario, Quebec, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. I say these places not just to share, but to remind myself of the larger family I share these waters with. Back to the 90s, there are also new agreements setting hopeful targets on cleaning up the Great Lakes. Great because they contain 20% of the world's surface freshwater. But 20 plus years later, only 4 out of the 43 particularly spoiled places called areas of concern have been delisted. Not to be confused with actually cleaned up, just delisted in a government kind of way. 20 years later, I've got a lot more experience and insight about how our society, particularly our economy and our culture, affect the ecology around us. In June of 2012, I set off on a bike tour of Lake Ontario. For 3 weeks, I tried to learn where I was, what was important to the people I met, and how many interdependent issues surrounded just this one lake. I took notes and photos and even made some videos. I was compelled to do all of this because of a new project I just started. Before the bike tour adventure was a discovery of the language and leadership behind a budding commons movement, connecting the dots between trade, taste, tourism, treaties, and trout. I jumped at the chance to support the work started by 2 groups, On the Commons and the Council of Canadians, because of their pivotal report called Our Great Lakes Commons, a people's plan to protect the Great Lakes forever. I've been working on the Great Lakes Commons map ever since I read and connected with that report. What is a commons? I've been asked that and asked myself that question a lot. One approach is talking about how water is both a gift from the past and a duty to protect this gift into the future. Water, like all the things we share and benefit from, such as the internet, air, airwaves, public services and spaces, mathematics, rituals, and even family recipes. Water's value is based not on ownership, but on its circulation and use. It's not a resource, it's a source of life. Twinned with these commons and many more are the nested, distributed, ancient, and even emerging social agreements that govern the access and use of a commons. This is called commoning. Think of commoning as the signs and social norms that encourage people to pick up their dog's poo at the park. Now, adapt that to the many examples above. Simple, yes? Not simple, but not as hard as you may think. Okay, so back to the Great Lakes. How can we get past the patchwork of states, provinces, and countries and reorient our perspectives and policies on the actual lakes? Or lake, if you think about it. Isn't it just one odd-sized lake? Google Maps gives great directions, but are no help for finding which watershed soaks up your rain, moves under your highways, and runs into your drinking water source. How can we practice our duty of protecting this glacial gift without a bioregional perspective? When someone pees in the public pool, the lifeguard doesn't say, "Will all the Torontonians please get out?" The borders that should matter are the watershed's borders, not the political ones since colonization. Actually, many of the state and province names that border the Great Lakes originate from the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Dakota peoples. These indigenous knowledge holders identify by many tribal names, but can teach the rest of us how to protect the Great Lakes. Protect them for the now 45 million people who depend on them for their daily drinking water. Some call this orientation bioregional, even a re-indigenization, and I think its time has come. A lot has changed since the 1990s, although we can still watch Seinfeld across the dial on reruns. The Great Lakes Commons map is a collaborative map. Think merging a wiki with a Google map, people coordinating and pooling their collective intelligence. Then, frame it with the size of the Great Lakes: Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, Ontario, and out through the St. Lawrence Seaway. Now, with this online map, allow users to mark their ideas to specific places in the bioregion using text, photos, and videos. They can use their computers or smartphones. They can share these posts on social media and make comments on posts shared by neighbors living upstream or downstream from themselves. The entire project runs on free open source software, customized, hosted, and hosting an unlimited amount of data, discussion, and story for basically a few $1,000s. Yes, a lot has changed since the 1990s. Articulating what a Great Lakes Commons community would be like is the goal. The map is the place-based way to connect the dots, start the dialogue, and celebrate the diversity of worry and wisdom that can still protect this gift. Today, you are invited to join this community. The same kind of thinking that created a problem can't be the one to solve it. Returning to an ancient water ethic and harnessing the potential of networked and shared voices creates a new kind of thinking, a new kind of power.